upholding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
We've signed a climate convention on the importance of economic instruments and free markets. Were included in this mammoth Agenda 21 document and the Rio Declaration. Now, let me be clear on one fundamental point. The United States fully intends to be the world's preeminent leader in protecting the global environment.
Coming up, Technocracy News. And greetings from Technocracy News and Trends. This is Patrick Wood, editor-in-chief and founder of Technocracy News and Trends. Today we're going to explore a couple of different topics. Number one is going to be 5G. 5G is in the media and in the public consciousness right now because of all of the angst that's happening over antennas being installed in places that people are very concerned about, like next to their bedroom windows and things like that. Well, Wall Street Journal published a significant article that indicates the pushback against 5G and 5G rollout around the country by cities and citizens. And this is a left-handed article. And I say that left-handed not to offend any left-handed people, trust me. But this is a backdoor left-handed swipe at people who are thinking that more testing needs to be done for 5G and that more caution should be given by cities and citizens alike to consider what this is going to do to their life and their lifestyle. And so this article starts out, Jack Tibbetts, a member of the Santa Rosa, California City Council, knew he had a problem. It was early in 2018, and he'd started getting phone calls from constituents at opposite ends of the political spectrum. The common thread, cellular antennas going up next to their homes, causing concerns over property values and health. The weight of the evidence suggests that if radio frequency emissions have any effect on humans at all, it is, according to the World Health Organization, about on a par with other possible carcinogenic substances, including coffee and pickles. The Federal Communications Commission, citing input from the Food and Drug Administration, recently declared that existing limits on the amount of radio frequency energy these antennas put out make them safe. A senior FCC official said there is nothing unique to 5G networks that poses additional health risks. Now, you can tell right off that this is a complete apologist article for 5G. It's perfectly safe. There's no problems with it whatsoever. The next paragraph lays it out. None of this has stopped the social media-fueled conspiracy whirligig that allows health scares to thrive on the internet. And the rest of the article tears into the whole plus and minus side of 5G, concluding that it is really safe and there's no reason to be alarmed whatsoever. And I will suggest to you that this battle is far from over, but the article does point out that cities are pushing back because of political pressure being applied by citizens to the city council to stop this. And if nothing else, this points out the power of people interacting with their own city council. This is what has caused the pushback in many cities across the country. And it's not going away. They can call it conspiracy theory all they want, but all the big tech companies need to do is just stand up to the plate and allow testing to take place, which they refuse to do. There have been no tests yet for the effects of 5G on humans. None. And there's no plans for it. This was revealed in congressional testimony, by the way, under oath, that there have been no studies and there's no studies planned, and big tech basically could care less what the health impact are. That just tells you that they basically know there is a health impact, but they're just not going to let anybody find out what it is. So don't bother to do testing. Nothing to see here. Just move on. Get off the conspiracy whirligig, as the Wall Street Journal calls it, and come back down to earth and just allow yourself to be saturated with 5G everything and 4G everything and 3G everything. Very few people point out is that just because 5G antennas are going up does not mean that 4G antennas are coming down. In fact, The 4G antennas that went up some years ago now did not replace the 3G antennas that were already there. Those are still mounted on poles and still active because there's still a raft of 3G phones that are out there. And as long as those phones are still alive, they can't just take those antennas down. So now you have an accumulation of 3G and 4G, and on top of that will be added 5G. None of those other antennas are going to be coming down. Nobody knows what the health effect will be by adding in another layer of 5G. And what concerns most people is that the frequency being used on the 5G network is a higher frequency that's been used in the past. It is potentially more damaging and more carcinogenic than anything has come before it. And the public companies that are promoting this, like Verizon and T-Mobile and AT&T, they refuse to do testing, and they refuse to allow any testing to come forward and say that it is dangerous. Nevertheless, a tip of the hat to all those cities who are taking action against the FCC bullying that's been going on and advising caution before they proceed. The next story has to do with China. Again, the title of the story is Silicon Valley is building a China-style social credit system. I told you this was coming for a long time. Now other writers are writing about it. This article states, have you heard about China's social credit system? It's a technology-enabled, surveillance-based, nationwide program designed to nudge citizens towards better behavior. The ultimate goal is to, quote, allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step, according to the Chinese government. In place since 2014, the social credit system is a work in progress that could evolve by next year into a single nationwide point system for all Chinese citizens, akin to a financial credit score. It aims to punish for transgressions that can include membership in or support for the Falun Gong or Tibetan Buddhism, failure to pay debts, excessive video gaming, criticizing the government, late payments, failing to sweep the sidewalk in front of your store or house, smoking or playing loud music on trains, jaywalking, and other actions deemed illegal or unacceptable by the Chinese government. It can also award points for charitable donations or even taking one's own parents to the doctor. Punishments can be harsh, including bans on leaving the country, using public transportation, checking into hotels, hiring for high-visibility jobs, or acceptance of children to private schools. It can also result in slower internet connections and social stigmatization in the form of registration on a public blacklist. China's social credit system has been characterized in one pithy tweet as, quote, authoritarianism gamified, close quote. At present, some parts of the social credit system are in force nationwide and others are local and limited. It notes there are 40 or so pilot projects operated by local governments and at least 6 run by tech giants like Alibaba and Tencent. Beijing maintains 2 nationwide lists called the Black List and the Red List, the former consisting of people who have transgressed and the latter people who have stayed out of trouble. That is, a red list is the communist version of a white list. That's because communist China has a red flag. These lists are publicly searchable on a government website called China Credit. The Chinese government also shares lists with technology platforms. So, for example, if someone criticizes the government on Weibo, their kids might be ineligible for acceptance into an elite school. Public shaming is also part of China's social credit system. Pictures of blacklisted people in one city were shown between videos on TikTok in a trial, and the addresses of blacklisted citizens were also shown on a map on WeChat. Some Western press reports imply that the Chinese populace is suffocating in a nationwide Skinner box of oppressive behavior modification. But some Chinese are unaware that it even exists, and many others actually like the idea. One survey found that 80% of Chinese citizens surveyed either somewhat or strongly approve of social credit system. And many Westerners are disturbed by what they read about China's social system, but such systems, it turns out, are not unique in China. A parallel system is developing in the United States. in part as a result of Silicon Valley and technology industry user policies, and in part by surveillance of social media activity by private companies. And this article goes on to explain in greater detail all of the elements of social credit scoring taking place in America right now. The system is growing up around us, my friends, and it's time to say no, we will not participate, and stop that. All of this initiative is coming from the big tech cartel, companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and so on. This is where this initiative is coming from. And even though corporate America is clamoring for it, corporate America does not have the wherewithal to create a tech-wide system of social credit scoring. Only big tech can do this. So big tech has jumped in bed with these corporate giants, and they're doing it on their behalf, but they're the ones that are driving it because they have massive amounts of money to put behind it. It'll affect every conceivable aspect of our lives if it's not held accountable right now. Some areas that it's infecting in particular are insurance companies. Companies like Uber and Airbnb are using it to screen passengers and clients. Under the concept of WhatsApp, the article states that you can be banned from communication apps too. For example, you can be banned on WhatsApp if too many users block you. You can also get banned for sending spam, threatening messages, trying to hack or reverse engineer the WhatsApp app, or using the service with an unauthorized application. Well, WhatsApp is small potatoes in the United States, but in much of the world, it's the main form of electronic communication. Not being allowed to use WhatsApp in some countries is as punishing as not being allowed to use a telephone system in America. This is not a good trend, and this is a side benefit brought to you by Big Tech. You can make your choice as to whether or not you want to participate in such a system. Actually, you're already participating whether you like it or not, but it's time to fight back against these big tech companies who think they can just do this without any consent from the public whatsoever. This is not America. In fact, this is flat out un-American. It's also unconstitutional. But then again, technocrats hate the Constitution, and they want no part of it. This next story, and the most important story, which I alluded to last week, has to do with an article that appeared in Foreign Policy magazine, which is one of the most important global elite magazines in the world. And I titled this article, "Could Brazil be invaded to save the Amazon rainforest?" This is an incredible thought, and this is not a headline just to grab attention. This is exactly what this article promotes. I've never seen such a thing in Foreign Policy magazine, honestly. I've read it for years. I've never seen anything quite so inflammatory and so outrageous as the thought that Brazil could be invaded militarily because of its quote-unquote mismanagement of the Amazon rainforest. I noted in a story last week that the disinformation campaign was raging over these fires. But as even NASA has noted, as NASA recently noted, Brazil and the Amazon rainforest are not having anything abnormal as far as the fire season is concerned. Every year, fires do occur. In fact, fires occur all over the planet. That's part of the nature of the world. Just like we have lightning, we have fires. But this provided a convenient platform for everybody to gang on and pile up on Brazil and demonize them, literally, for activity that by and large is out of their control. Well, I wrote at the head of this article, I want to focus on this for just a few minutes. I wrote the global elite, via Foreign Policy magazine, are floating a dangerous narrative. First, by suggesting the possibility that radical leftist environmentalist Gavin Newsom, the current governor of California, could be a future president of the United States. And secondly, that the U.S., under Newsom's leadership, might lead a military action against Brazil to save the Amazon rainforest from destruction. As outrageous as it is, this editor has seen many such trial balloons over the years, and they serve to manipulate public perception while hinting at their actual future plans. When media demonizes a people, nation, or idea to this extent, you can see their endgame. This very dangerous rhetoric is radiated through the United Nations to create anger amongst climate activists throughout the world. And this, of course, is to drive political action against climate change and to accept sustainable development. Now, having said that, I want to read this article to you so that you can understand this is not me making this conclusion. This is the first opening paragraph, a scenario that Foreign Policy Magazine is suggesting or just throwing out. I read it last week. I'm going to read it again. August 5, 2025. In a televised address to the nation, U.S. President Gavin Newsom announced that he had given Brazil a 1-week ultimatum to cease destructive deforestation activities in the Amazon rainforest. If Brazil did not comply, the president warned he would order a naval blockade of Brazilian ports and airstrikes against critical Brazilian infrastructures. The president's decision came in the aftermath of a new United Nations report cataloging the catastrophic global effects of continued rainforest destruction, which warned of a critical tipping point that, if reached, could trigger a rapid acceleration of global warming. Although China has stated it would veto any UN Security Council resolution authorizing the use of force against Brazil, the president said that a large coalition of concerned states was prepared to support the U.S. action. At the same time, Newsom said the United States and other countries were willing to negotiate a compensation package to mitigate the cost to Brazil for protecting the rainforest, but only if it first ceased its current efforts to accelerate development. Close quote. The article then continues. The above scenario is obviously far-fetched. That's the nature, by the way, of a trial balloon. At least I think it is, the author writes. But how far would you go to prevent irreversible environmental damage? In particular, do states have the right or even the obligation to intervene in a foreign country in order to prevent it from causing irreversible and possibly catastrophic harm to the environment? I raise this issue, says the author, in light of the news that Brazilian President Bolsonaro is accelerating development of the Amazon rainforest, 60% of which is in Brazilian hands, thereby imperiling a critical global resource. As those of you with more respect for science than Bolsonaro know, that's a slap in the face, by the way, of the president of Brazil, the rainforest is both an important carbon sink and a critical temperature regulator, which has never been proved, by the way, as well as a key resource of fresh water. I've never had a glass of fresh water from the Amazon, by the way, so this is a curious statement. Deforestation has already damaged its ability to perform these crucial roles, and scientists in Brazil estimate that increasingly warm and dry conditions could convert much of the forest to dry savanna, with potentially catastrophic effects. Last week, the pro-business, free market-oriented Economist magazine cover story was Death Watch for the Amazon. How's that for alarmism? Which frames the issue rather nicely. To restate my original question, what should or must the international community do to prevent a misguided Brazilian president or political leaders in other countries from taking actions that could harm all of us? This is where it gets tricky, he says. State sovereignty is a critical element of the current international system. With certain exceptions, national governments are free to do whatever they want inside their own borders. Even so, the hard shell of sovereignty has never been absolute, and various forces have been chipping away at it for a long time. States can be sanctioned for violating international law, for instance, by defying UN Security Council resolutions, and international law authorizes countries to go to war for self-defense or when the Security Council authorizes military action. It's even legal to attack another country's territory preemptively, providing there's a well-founded basis for believing it was about to attack you first. More controversially, the responsibility to protect doctrine sought to legitimate humanitarian intervention in foreign powers when the local government was unable or unwilling to protect its own people. And as a practical matter, states routinely accept infringements on their own sovereignty in order to facilitate beneficial forms of international cooperation. When push comes to shove, however, more states resent and resist external efforts to get them to change what they are doing inside their own borders. And even though destroying the Amazon rainforest represents a clear and obvious threat to many other countries, telling Brazil to stop and threatening to take action to deter, punish, or prevent would be a whole new ballgame. And I don't mean to single out Brazil. It would be an equally radical step to threaten the United States or China if they refuse to stop emitting so many greenhouse gases. This article goes on, and I encourage you to read it because it's a very important tell as to where the global elite's mind is at this point regarding the breakdown of national sovereignty, regarding the issue of a major conservation area in Brazil, namely the Amazon rainforest, which also, as we noted earlier, exists in several other countries as well in close proximity. Yes, it has been a national treasure. There's no doubt about that. It's a magnificent, magnificent part of creation. But for anybody to suggest that military intervention via a blockade, via the bombing of infrastructure within the country over anything that has to do with global warming or sustainable development is absolutely outrageous. This is one of the most irresponsible articles I have seen in the last 40 years. And if I were in Brazil's shoes right now, I'd be looking over my shoulder. A lot of people amongst the global elite are demonizing Brazil and its President Bolsonaro to try and intimidate them into accepting some kind of solution that will strip Brazil of its sovereignty, or at least partially strip it of its sovereignty, and allow meddling foreign intervention to tell them what to do with their sovereign country. And I might add again, just to reiterate, the entire outrage over the forest fires that are burning in the rainforest right now are absolutely bogus. This is a normal fire season that has been noted by organizations such as NASA. All of the hype, all of the Chicken Little alarmism has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with political demonization of a sovereign country and its duly elected president. I hope you can see through this and see that the global elite is thinking very dangerously these days. Maybe they're getting desperate, but people around the world need to put the kibosh on this, and soon. I want to point out, by the way, as we close, that this last week I added a new feature to Technocracy.news, which has already proven to be an amazing asset, and that is the ability to translate any page, or the entire website for that matter, into a foreign language right before your eyes. And you say, well, how does this happen? Well, if you're on the Technocracy.news webpage, in the main menu, just under the logo, where it says Technocracy News and Trends, there's a menu bar, and on the right side, you'll see a drop-down. You can select any language and then browse as normal, and you will be viewing every page and every menu item according to that language that you selected. I hope you can spread this to your overseas friends and tell them no need to read Technocracy.news in English only now. And the fallout of this already is very interesting. In Europe, where German is spoken in many different countries besides Germany, traffic to Technocracy News has increased over the weekend by some 50%, with readers coming in and accessing the German translation. This tells me something. People want to know what's going on. They know something is wrong, they want to know what it is, and now they can read it in their own language. So I hope that you share that with anybody, or perhaps you yourself are familiar with another language better than English. I hope you can take advantage of it. I'm Patrick Wood for Technocracy News and Trends. We'll see you next time.